In the introduction to his magical work, Illumination in the Flatwoods, Joe Hutto makes the following statement about turkey behavior. Only in recent years, with the development of portable radio telemetry technology, has wild turkey behavior begun to come to light. These studies are, of course, limited in their scope and provide only broad overviews of behavior, as revealing as the use of aerial photography would be to observe human behavior. We could identify traffic and road systems, settlement patterns, and places of specific activity, but we would observe little of the day-to-day, minute-to-minute nuances of individual behavior and personality. Joe, as usual, is bang on the money with his simile, and is the first to admit that his study, which began when the eggs he hatched were still eggs, ended at the end of the first year. His study is the premier piece of work about the lifestyle and habits of a drove of wild turkeys in their first year. But when the drove began to drift apart, this marvelous insight into the lives of the individual members of the drove ceases. There at the last, there are even instances of Joe receiving severe aggressive behavior from the one male member of the group still near the original roosting area. All of which means to me that after the first 10 months or so, we are back in the office looking at the aerial photographs and trying to put together pieces of the puzzle from instances in our own experience, just as we have been doing for years. Either that, or we're going to have to wait for someone with Joe's dedication and patience, and who, besides that, looks like a wild turkey and can fly, to come back and give us an recounting of months 11 through 24, a set of individual qualifications I personally think are going to be very hard to find. Some of the instances of either personal or recounted observation, not based on telemetry, but from people who I consider to be unimpeachable sources, come immediately to mind. The earliest is the comment about young gobblers made in McElhenney's book, The Wild Turkey and Its Hunting, first published in 1912. The comment was not original with Edward McElhenney. It comes from Charles Jordan and is made on the first page of chapter 14, page 213 in McElhenney's book. He says, "Of all stages, conditions, and peculiarities of these fowls, the young gobbler is the most difficult to understand. He is absolutely unique, hence you must employ entirely different tactics when you go in quest of him. He has little education, but he possesses a great native shrewdness, and I have sometimes thought him more difficult to get than either the old gobbler or hen. This may be a fool's luck, or it may be the result of stupidity or reticence, but I have killed 10 old gobblers to one young one." I simply cannot square that comment with any of my own experiences, and I am quite well aware that I am on the shakiest of grounds when I have the temerity to make such a statement. Charles L. Jordan was born in 1842 and died in 1909, and hunted across the Gulf Coast from northwest Florida to East Texas for a period of 60 years. This was in the days before bag limits, closed seasons, gender restrictions, or in fact before restrictions of any sort other than available time and ammunition supply. The lumber industry had not yet penetrated into the South, so Jordan hunted largely in virgin timber. Market hunting was still an acceptable practice, and Mr. Jordan's biographer says that Jordan's study of this bird occupied almost his entire time. Jordan's observations were not those of an office worker who hunted turkeys 8 or 10 days a season. He says himself that, quote, "I believe I have killed as many old gobblers with patriarchal beards as any man in the world." There are no numbers quoted, and I have no access to his game books, assuming he kept any. But I am confident that they are reading the observations of an individual who probably killed 40 or 50 turkeys a year for 60 years. There are too many throwaway lines of multiple kills for there had to be any fewer than that. He understood and noted the proclivity of young gobblers to get back together after being scattered in the fall. He regards the separation of hens, old gobblers, and young gobblers into specific droves in December. In the entire scope of the Jordan/McElhenney volume, I find no other behavioral characteristic that I do not agree with, and a great many I wish I had taken to heart when I first read this book 25 years ago. I could go on, but I will not. And I recognize that I put myself into the position of an amateur painter who is saying, in effect, that Michelangelo was a dago who was pretty fair on ceilings, but was generally guilty of sloppy brushwork. I still can't square it. Yearling gobblers nowadays are called jakes, a term that was never used in my boyhood, nor can I recall ever hearing the word before 1960 or so. It is considered a class act and a sporting proposition to pass them up today on the grounds that they are too easy, except that in doing so, we tend to get our biological metaphors mixed, as it were. The state of Mississippi, for example, forbids the killing of jakes in the spring, but allows a hunter to kill a hen during the fall season. Fit that one between the lines of your citation for the Class Act Award if you can.